Episode 29 of the State of the Old Republic podcast was originally recorded on March 20th, 2017. It's the State of the Old Republic podcast. This week, I spent some time leveling up alt, and it got me thinking, is SWTOR alt-friendly? I'll share my thoughts on this topic this week. And now that I finally have this army of alts, I'll talk about gearing them under galactic command. And finally this week, a player named SWTOR Vega wrote a great guide on making credits. I'll go over some of his tips and relate them to my own credit making experience. And with that, it's time to make the jump to Lightspeed and check out the State of the Old Republic. Well, welcome to episode 29 of the State of the Old Republic podcast. I'm your host, Ted, and as you heard in the opening, I have another terrific show lined up for you today. First, as always, let's review some announcements for the Old Republic. And nothing really new other than just a reminder that BioWare will be holding a Cantina tour at Star Wars Celebration in Orlando, and that it will be held on Friday, April the 14th at the Hilton Orlando. And they still have not announced a time for the event, but again, it's just expected to be sometime in the early evening. And as a reminder, they said space will be limited, so be sure to arrive early and that it is an adult event and all attendees must be 18 years or older to participate and be prepared to show an ID. So that's it. I mean, it's getting closer and closer, so no more announcements for this week. So with that, let's go ahead and just slice the holonet and get straight to the news. And it turns out that it was somewhat of a light news week, at least in terms of the official forums and statements from BioWare. So nothing to report from there. So what I thought I would do today is take a look at alts and ask the question, is the game alt friendly? Now, since I am an IT guy, I am going to give you the standard IT answer to all questions, which is, that depends. And one of the things I did this weekend was level up my remaining level 65 alts and got them all to level 70. And this was on my main server where I have 23 characters, 19 of which are now level 70. And it sounds crazy to say that, only because I remember back in the day, if you had 8 level 50 characters, you were a bit insane. That was much harder to do. And here I am with 19 that are now max level. But as you would expect, of course, this means I think I have one of every class. Well, I do have one of every class, and obviously multiples of advanced classes. So when it comes to leveling alts, the game is very, very friendly. I mean, even without the XP bonus event, it's still very, very easy. I mean, it's easy. I was getting characters from level 65 to level 70 in well under an hour. And it was interesting to see this play out because my alts were in various stages of questing, and based on that, some went faster than others. Most of my characters were still working on Knights of the Fallen Empire, but I also had some that were on Shadow of Revan as well as Makeb. A lot of my characters, interestingly enough, were on Chapter 12 for Knights of the Fallen Empire, Visions of the Dark. That just seemed to be a common stopping point for me for many of my characters. Now, one thing that I discovered was that Knights of the Fallen Empire chapters rewarded excellent XP until you hit level 66, and then it dropped significantly. And so, from the standpoint of just trying to get to level 70, not really completing stories or anything, but just getting from 65 to level 70, I found that for characters that were still on Knights of the Fallen Empire, that it was useful to visit my old friend Chapter 2, A Dream of Empire. So one run through this at level 65 granted enough XP to actually get to level 67. So that was a quick way to gain a couple of levels right off the bat. Now, keep in mind, I was using the Victorious Pioneers armor set, plus Guild XP, plus Legacy Mission XP, and an XP boost. So I had all of these things coming together to maximize the amount of XP that I was earning. And then after hitting level 67, I just went around and ran some of the planetary heroics. Starter planets and Coruscant and Dromankos were good, mainly because they're very easy and they're short. Voss was another good one as well, because you have only 4 quests, plus there's a weekly, which yields a pretty decent amount of XP. But yeah, I mean, if you just want to get an alt from level 65 to level 70 as quick as you can, the game has all the tools to accommodate that. In fact, this weekend I did 2 troopers, an Imperial agent, a smuggler, a Sith warrior, 2 Sith Inquisitors, and 2 Jedi Knights. So my remaining alts that I have on this server are all in the earlier stages of leveling. Like I'm talking about, I think the highest is level 33. So I'll get to them eventually, but no immediate rush for that. So in terms of leveling alt, the game is extremely friendly. For other things, maybe not so much. Now, I've talked about companion influence in the past, and for the record, I don't like it, mainly because there are so many companions, and if you have a lot of alts, it's just one of these impossible mountains to climb. I actually don't mind the idea of companion influence and leveling that up. It's not bad in and of itself, but when you start to look at the large number of companions that a single character can have, and then you start to multiply that by the number of alts that people have, it just, as I said, just becomes this, it's impossible. It just becomes impossible to even consider getting their influence level on these characters up to 50, on all of these characters. Now, you don't really need that per se, but it's nice, right? It's just something you can do. And it's a nice thing to have, but it's just too many companions, too many characters that, I would say in this regard, companions are definitely not alt friendly. In fact, I would dare to say that they are barely main friendly at this point. So that is one of the areas I think that, where the game, needs some improvement. And I'm not really sure what you do, right? Because if you make it too easy to get all these companion influence up, then for those people that really just focus on 1 or 2 characters, then it looks really silly, right? Because all of a sudden, boom, you'll get a bunch of companions up to level 50, influence level very, very quickly. And that one character could become, somewhat powerful, I guess, if you will, in terms of crew skills and everything else, very, very quickly. So I'm not sure what the solution is, other than I think maybe what they need to do for alts in general is once you get like 1, maybe 2 tunes to a certain level in whatever the system might be, whether it's companion influence or galactic command, that maybe they just, once you reach a certain threshold, the system just becomes easier, for any additional tunes that you want to bring through this process. Because obviously we know not only this companion influence, not all that friendly, but certainly galactic command for alts is not where it ought to be. And I mean, that's another giant grind and another big uphill climb that exists in the game, which sort of brings me to the next topic here, which is talking about gear and the state of gearing up alts in Knights of the Eternal Throne. And in my opinion, gearing up alts is kind of a mixed bag right now. And obviously this is due to galactic command. I think it's going to get a little bit better, but I'm just not sure that it's as good as it was in 4.0 and before. So I thought it'd be good just to talk about different ways that exist to gear up alts. And the big thing is when you look at your characters, most people use legacy armor for their characters. And I highly recommend this, certainly on not just your main tune, but on all your tunes, that you get a set of legacy armor and use that for your gearing purposes. And thanks to the outfit designer, this is a great method for maintaining gear. And legacy armor is pretty easy to obtain. I mean, you can get it for direct purchase from vendors. If you run planetary heroics, you can get it from those crates that you turn in on Odessen. If you've been playing the game a long time, you probably have a whole bunch of those pilot suits or even some of the dark versus light armors that were rewards from that event. I think the bottom line here is legacy armor is easy to come by and it won't break your bank trying to obtain it. And a full set of armor has 7 pieces for the following slots, right? You got your head, your chest, your legs, your gloves, your boots, belts, and wrists. So 7 pieces in all. And you can also use legacy gear for weapons, but I think most people prefer to go for looks with their weapons since the outfit designer does not apply to weapons. So the weapons I think people tend to be non-legacy. At least that's the case for me. If your class has a hidden offhand, like a focus or a shield, you can go legacy for that, but those are a little bit harder to obtain, and I believe that the only source of those is the GRE event. So, you just have to pay attention to when the GRE event is, and get those Helix components and then, save those up to purchase some of those offhands, because that's the only place you can get many of them. So why use legacy gear, right? I've talked about why is this a good thing? Well, one, you can transfer that gear to your alts, right? You can just take that set of gear, put it in a legacy bank, and then you can pick it up on any of your alts. And let's say, for example, like in my case, my main tune is a mercenary. Well, if I give those pieces to another mercenary or a commando, the set bonuses will apply, which is really, really nice. So that's one big advantage, that you can sort of transfer set bonuses over to similar classes. You only have to augment the gear one time. You just add an augment slot to it and you're done. So when you get a new piece of gear, you just rip the mods, etc. out of it and put it in your existing gear. Now, I haven't priced it out. And of course, it's possible that it may be cheaper to augment the new piece, but it's certainly less convenient. Like for example, legendary gear costs a lot if you want to rip out the mods and enhancements and everything. It's like 48,000 credits, to remove one of those. I think comes out to be like almost 150,000 credits to rip everything out of a legendary piece of gear. Ouch. So, I mean, in that sense, you might be better just putting an augment kit on that gear, ripping out your augment from your old piece. But I don't know, I just like having legacy gear for my characters. So, I mean, you can see because there are definitely advantages to using the legacy gear. Even without the set bonus, you can give that gear to any alt and they'll be pretty powerful to do something like run an uprising or even an op. I mean, my main tune is full 240 plus item rating gear. So handing that gear to a fresh 70, it's a pretty good deal. It's a pretty good deal. The downside is that it only applies to those 7 pieces, which means your alt likely won't be optimized. And you may have to shuffle augments around or live with not being min-maxed, or God forbid you fall under the accuracy cap as well if it's the DPS tune or something. So that's one of the negatives there. The other is you could have like 240 rating armor pieces, but then that character might have like 220 or 228 or 230 implants, ears, relics, and weapons. It all depends on where they're at. So that's what I don't like about it either. And think about it this way. So, and by transferring that gear, right, you're all of a sudden giving a alt like rank 3, if you will, tier 3, a bunch of tier 3 gear, but then if they're only on galactic command rank, or tier 1, well then every time you do something with them and they earn CXP, well they're getting, tier 1 crates, and so maybe you get a tier 1 implant or a tier 1 relic or something like that. Now you can buy this gear, right? You could go to the GTN and you could purchase some relics and implants and earpieces. A lot of players are crafting some of these items. I think you can find them as high as 240 item rating, or you might go just a tier lower because it'll be a little bit cheaper just to fill in those gaps and stay pretty strong. But it's expensive. It's expensive. And, for me, 19 level 70s, I'm not doing that for 19 level 70s. I'll just go broke. I'll go broke. I don't have nearly enough credits, for that to be worthwhile. And then the other downside is, you're not going to have set bonuses. If I'm on a mercenary and I hand that gear over to a Sith Inquisitor, the set bonuses aren't going to transfer over. It'll just be, 240 item rating armor, which is okay, but it's not ideal. So, like I said, I think the legacy armor and the transferring the gear like that is just a good way to kind of buff up one of your alts, especially a fresh level 70, very, very quickly. So they're at least, geared enough to feel comfortable maybe hopping into an uprising or something along those lines. And the other thing you can do, though, with your main tune is to, this is where the choice is, right? One option, you can disintegrate all these duplicate items and things that you don't need for CXP and continue getting crates and working through Galactic Command on your main tune. Or you can pull some of those prototype items, maybe even some of the green items, whatever it may be, and you can start, stripping out the armorings and the enhancements and the mods, and you can put that in legacy gear and start gearing up your alts, that way. And that's not a bad method either. And I've done that for some of my other characters, where I'll just take some of those items and then start putting together sets of gear and giving them to my alt. So in that sense, I'm using Galactic Command to gear up on my main tune to gear up alts on my other tune. And that's another way you can sort of do that. Again, the missing items will be those, implants and the relics and the earpieces. So, and then there are other things you can do too, right? The Galactic Command currency is bind on legacy. Some of those CXP, packs that you get from drops and flashpoints and operations, that's bind on legacy, though. So that's a way you can give those to other characters to help boost and speed up their CXP gains. But again, once game update 5.2 comes around, and we're going to get to tier 4, probably going to want to save those on your tune that's earning the tier 4 gear and just, use that and just take some of that gear and pass it on down to the alts. Cause it's, if your alts are on tier 1, it's just going to be way better than anything that they're earning out of their crates. So overall, I would say that gearing alts isn't great. It's, I'm just trying to think of how it was prior to this, other than, you had to go and play your alt, and it was a little bit easier to do that. 5.2 makes it a little bit easier. If you can get geared up enough to maybe to get into like a story mode operation or something like that, then you can start, picking up pieces and things like that. I think it'll be a little bit easier. But the big takeaway here is I definitely recommend doing two things. Using legacy gear on your main tune so you can transfer that over to other tunes that you want to play and kind of buff them up. And then maybe considering using some of those duplicate pieces and unwanted pieces that your main doesn't need, and using those to put together gear sets for your alts. So that's really all I had to say about alts today and gearing them up and whether or not the game is friendly or not. And the answer is it's like I said, it's really kind of a mixed bag. I think if you just want to level up some other tunes and take them through some stories and things like that, yeah, it's perfectly fine. Perfectly, it's great for that. But, companions, gearing, needs a little bit of work, and we'll see, might have to wait until the next expansion to see if they take that into consideration and make the game a little bit more alt friendly. So my final topic for today I wanted to talk about was making credits. And, like I said, there's a player who goes by the name of Swotor Vega, put together an excellent guide on making credits. And I will put a link in the show notes, that I post at sotorpodcast.com and other places that I can. But here's the URL. And I have to say, it's a very radio unfriendly URL. I will read it out to you one time, and I assume you all have pause and rewind buttons and can get it that way if need be. But without further ado, the link to the guide is swotorista.com, and that's SWTORISTA.com /Swotor, that's SWTOR _ Vega, VEGA _ building, underscore wealth underscore in underscore SWOTOR underscore guide underscore 4, and that's the word for, FOR, underscore 5, and that's the number 5, underscore KOTET, which of course is KOTET .pdf. Whew. So there you go. And as you can see, it's a PDF document, so you can download it and just store it on your computer locally if you want. Now, as some of you may know, I like to dabble in the GTN and make credits. I certainly won't claim to be great at it, in part because I don't dedicate enough time to it, and with Galactic Command, I've really ignored it this expansion. I'm trying to get back into it though, because with each expansion we seem to experience inflation, and all of a sudden 155 million credits, which is where I am right now, doesn't feel like that much. And just to put that in perspective, SWOTOR Vega wrote in his guide that he was currently sitting on 500 million credits with another 900 million in items that are in his inventory. So basically 900 million in non-liquid assets. And in case you're wondering, I believe the current credit cap, and there is a cap, is 4.2 billion. So I'm not going to go through the entire guide, but I'm just going to cover some of the principles that I agree with and relate that to my own experience and throw in a couple of things maybe that aren't in the guide as well. So my first bit of advice is this, and especially if you're just starting out, don't try and do everything at once. And there's this old Jedi proverb that goes, how do you eat a whole bantha? Well, the answer, my Padawan, is one bite at a time. And one of the things covered in the guide that I did is, before you begin, have a goal and make a plan. And be realistic about it. It's easy to say that your goal is to reach the 4.2 billion credit cap. And there's nothing wrong with having that as a goal, but that's a pretty big mountain to climb. And if that's your only goal, you'll never reach it because it feels out of reach. You really do need to eat the bantha one bite at a time. So if the credit cap is your ultimate goal, then you need to have small goals to help you get there. If you have 100 credits now, your first goal might be to get 1 million. And when you hit that, set a new goal of, say, 5 million, and then 10, and so on. Once you have these goals, you need to set a time frame to achieve them. If you just leave them open-ended, you'll probably lose interest and stop trying. Your goal, for example, should be to earn 1 million credits in the next 5 days. So, basically your goal should be, I want to earn X number of credits by X date. And once you have a goal, you should start to put together a plan to achieve it. And that's mostly figuring out how you're going to make your credits. And this should primarily revolve around selling stuff on the GTN. You don't have to do that exclusively. Running Planetary Heroics is a legitimate way to make credits. In fact, it's a good way to make credits. Also, you don't have to settle on one thing, but you do need to be careful about stretching yourself too thin. To that end, you need to spend time and do a little research as well as some trial and error. And I recommend that you spend some time on the GTN just looking at items. See what's up for sale, for how much. Look at the volume that's for sale. Look at the sellers. How many are there? Is it 20 different people or just 2 or 3? See what's out there and see what you can produce and find a market that works for you. And once you settle on something, continue to research it until you know it inside and out. You want to specialize in Cartel Market armor. Just don't go by the bronze, silver, gold, or platinum rarity as an indicator of, how much you should sell something for. Go to a site like SWOTOR Fashion, or Tor Fashion, I believe it's called, and see what all the cool kids are wearing. People just don't equip full armor sets. They mix and match. And you might find that there's a particular belt that maybe comes from a bronze rarity set that is all the rage. It might be something you can get easily and on the cheap and then sell it for huge gains. The bottom line is, whatever market you're specializing is, get to know it really, really well. Which brings me to the next subject here. What are the different ways you can make credits? And this isn't all of them, but here are some things you can do, right? You can run heroics. Crew skills as well. Crafting, right? Find items to craft. Look at augments. augment kits, stims, adrenals, med packs. Those are all consumable items that I find sell very, very well. If you don't really feel like crafting, because, maybe it takes multiple characters and you just don't want to spend the time swapping back and forth, whatever the reason, you could just gather materials and choose to sell those raw materials. People craft, then they need them. And sometimes people just choose to buy those rather than take the time to farm them. So that's just something else you consider. There are vendors throughout the game that sell items, like reputation vendors and various things. You could go find out which ones sell things that people would want, and you can just buy them and sell them on the GTN. You'd be surprised how many people don't really know that they exist, and you'll also be surprised at how many people do know they exist, but hey, they happen to see it on the GTN, and they don't feel like trekking out to wherever it is, to go buy the item, and they'll buy it. The one thing that comes to mind, there's a vendor in the Smuggler's Den that sells a mount. I don't know how much it costs, how much he sells it for. It's like a Gurian style mount. It's all black. It's actually kind of nice. But, if you want to buy it, you have to go out to the Smuggler's Den. That's something you could do. You could go to the Smuggler's Den, buy a bunch of them, try selling them on the GTN and see how it works out. Again, might want to try different things, some trial and error here to figure out what it is you want to do and what works for you. One of the things you can do is you can flip items. You can scour the GTN for items that are priced too low, buy them, and relist them immediately for a higher price. People make mistakes listing items all of the time. They didn't check the existing selling prices before they listed and just went too low. They didn't count the zeros when they input their selling price and sold something for 500 credits instead of 5 million. They're new to the GTN and didn't understand that you could override the default selling price. So for example, the default selling price for mounts is 112,500 credits. I like to do a search for items of that price and below and see if I can find any bargains. Occasionally you will. Along those lines, there's 3 things that I think you should always do when you go to list something on the GTN. First, check to see what's for sale right now. And you're looking for the price, the minimum price, right? Maximum price, and the volume. How many of these items are up there? Second, check your listing price before you hit sell. As I said, count the zeros and make sure it's what you want it to be. And the third thing is, once you hit the sell button and list the item, check your listings just again to make sure that they are correct and you've got the correct selling price. A few other things to be mindful of are be wary of trying to corner a market. And this is where you go in and buy up everything that's for sale and then relist it at your desired price. It's a hard thing to do. And of course, a lot depends on what the market is, that you're dealing in. Consumables such as augment kits, I think it's a very hard market to corner. They sell fast and lots of people like to sell them. And if you're not careful, you can end up with a big supply that you've invested a lot of credits in but aren't going to be able to recoup. The other thing I recommend, and this wasn't in the guide, and that's to try and get in the position of where you don't need the credits right now. And let me repeat that. You want to try and get in a position where you don't need the credits right now. Because if you don't need credits for something immediately, you'll have a lot more flexibility when it comes to selling stuff. One, you can limit your supply and not feel a need to sell it all at once. You can also list it for a better price, as you won't have a huge need to undercut by a large amount to ensure your items sell first. And there will be times when the going rate for something you want to sell is lower than you can get, but the going rate isn't necessarily low enough to buy everything and relist it. And so sometimes you have to hang on to your supply and just wait for a better moment to sell things. And, don't be afraid to invest either. And this is something I'm not very good at this. And what I mean is spending large amounts of credits on items that that not only will you just recoup that cost, but you'll make a profit down the line. And I'm thinking mostly in terms of dealing in packs and hyper crates from the GTN. That is something I have yet to truly dabble in, but I am considering. Though. But the other thing I should say about the cartel market, you do not need to spend real money in order to make fake money, if you will. That does not have to be a strategy whatsoever. You don't have to spend money, buy cartel coins, and then buy things from the cartel market and then sell them. That is not that. Yes. Can you make money doing that? Absolutely. But that is not a requirement to making credits in this game and playing the GTN. I just want to be clear on that. And the guy does mention that. In fact, that's one of the assumptions that the person that Sotor Vega made when he was writing your guide, that in fact you aren't doing that. And I think that's important to note. And then the last bit of advice I would offer is be frugal and save those credits. But if you find something you really want and it's a good price, buy it. Buy it. The whole point of earning credits is so you can buy cool things for your characters, whether it's decorations, mounts, armors, weapons, crystals, whatever you want. And the reason you want to have a boatload of credits is so you can buy these cool things and not care how much they cost and not worry about breaking your bank. Yes, you want to earn credits, but you should have fun spending them as well. That's the whole point. There's no retirement here. This isn't like the real world where you need to hang on to this so you can have a wonderful life in your retirement when you're done saving the galaxy and want to just kick back on your Yavin 4 stronghold. It doesn't exist in this game. So, you just need the credits to feel comfortable buying things and trying to keep up, of course, with inflation, because what seems to happen is with each expansion, prices go up and up and up. Well, that's it for credits and the GTN, and that is it for this week, because I definitely hear the music, and that can mean only one thing. You have managed to survive another half hour listening to episode 29 of the State of the Old Republic podcast. I'm your host, Ted, and I do thank you for tuning in. You can find this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, YouTube, and Buzzsprout. You can also listen to the show directly from the show site, which is currently sotorpodcast.com, and there is an RSS feed where you can subscribe to the podcast directly. If you have a question for the show, you can email me at sotorpodcast@gmail.com. You can also tweet your questions to @sotorpodcast, and be sure to follow me on Twitter to get the latest information on the show. So look for episode 30 on March 28th, 2017. And remember the Sith code, cake is a lie.